I am Janet Hicks Johnson. When Kathy Shire asked me if I'd speak to the meeting about my spiritual journey, I was kind of taken aback. I felt honored, but I'd never thought much about it. The term spiritual journey? I don't remember my mother or my father or my relatives using those terms. I think I'm more of a mind the light, which happens to be George Will's motto, or let your lives speak variety, than directly talking about my spirituality in some lofty, abstract manner. But looking back, I've been influenced living in a family of where Quaker meeting was central to our lives. But ultimately, I needed to figure out all this for myself. Let me tell you a little bit about history of my family. My father's family has lived or in or near Westbury, Long Island, New York since the 1650s. The Hicks family had started migrating to America in the 1620s. They came to Massachusetts and ended up in Long Island by the 1650s. They became Quakers after coming to Long Island. Another great whatever grandfather, Henry Willis, who lived from 1628 to 1714, heard George Fox preach in London. He became a Quaker in London, was persecuted for his family, and came to America with his family as Quakers. He settled on Long Island and named the place Westbury after his hometown in Wiltshire, England. Westbury, Long Island, was a farming community. In the late 1680s and 90s, it continued to grow, and the families became intertwined through marriages, and that continued. I will say that if you look at the old Long Island Quaker names, they're probably related to me in some way, where they became intertwined through marriages. But there were Hickses, there were Jacksons, there were Willises, there were Willets, there were Titus. I could go Jackson. I could go on and on. The first mention of a meeting in Westbury was in 1671, and the meeting house was constructed in 1700. I'm talking about my father's family. They were all Quakers, Quaker preachers and leaders, merchants, and very involved in social justice and other Quaker issues of the day. Since they stayed in the same place for so long and were very thrifty, little was thrown away. Hence, we've got a lot of records and stories about my family's past as Quakers. Growing up, I lived next door to my cousin in our tree nursery property, and within walking distance of my grandparents, great aunts, and a variety of other cousins. We saw each other most days. My relatives. Many live for a long time. For example, my grandmother, Caroline Jackson Hicks, was born in 1872 in the neighboring Quaker community of Jericho. Her mother was born in 1829. That's my great-grandmother. And my great-great-grandmother was born in 1787. Now that is a long way back, okay? With many relatives living nearby and living for a long time, these thrifty Quakers, they'd tell my grandmother or aunts or someone would tell stories about some aunt or cousin, and you realize, oh my golly, that person lived 150, 175 years ago. My father's sister, my aunt, recorded many of these stories, which provide a picture of what life was like then and how they dealt with the issues of the day. My grandmother also kept a diary for many of her 106 years, so there's a lot to read. I'm going to just highlight with a couple of stories from my past. I realize who I've picked are the three of my great-great-whatever grandfathers. The women were pretty strong too, but that'll have to be for another time. Okay, one of my grandfathers, Isaac Hicks, 7 generations back, became a shipping merchant in New York City. He lived 1767 to 1820 to keep all these people in line. Okay, he was active in the shipping business from about 1790 to 1807, with his ships going to the Mediterranean, Balkans, and even Russia. One of his ships was commissioned by George Washington. After the Revolutionary War, the British no longer provided protection against pirates to American ships. One of Isaac's ships was captured off the Barbary coast. Okay? Isaac and his partner sent another ship there to get it back and to get his crew back. It took 20 years before the last crew members were returned, but they stuck with it. It happened to have been a freed black who the pirates kept because the pirates felt that they could get the best price for him. They got him back. 20 years. Now, several years before the outbreak of the War of 1812, a cousin, Quaker preacher Elias Hicks, 1748 to 1830, um, at, urged Isaac Hicks to sell his ships and to return to life as a farmer in Westbury, which is what he did. I wanted to say that the Quakers were successful businessmen because people trusted them. Thus, a ship captain could bring his goods to a Quaker merchant, leave them to be sold, and return for another voyage. Otherwise, the ship captain would need to wait in port until he'd sold all his wares before setting forth again. Isaac had been a staunch abolitionist. He was active in the New York Manumission Society, and he went out preaching with his cousin Elias, although Elias was the main one. They were wearing woolen underwear in protest of the cotton slave market. Okay. Now, this is not the nice cashmere or soft woolens that we have today. I am sure that this was the itchy stuff. Okay. Elias Hicks, a cousin of this Isaac Hicks's, was a Quaker merchant and early advocate for the abolition of slavery, and he emphasized the primacy of the inner light over biblical authority. He wanted to get back to the early Quaker roots. His messages were very controversial, and many meetings split over the issue of biblical authority. In 1827 to 1828, there was an official Hicksite Orthodox split with the Hicksites representing the more liberal faction of Quakerism. This split occurred in many places. As a matter of fact, there are two meeting houses, one Hicksite and one Orthodox in Westbury, as there were in Sandy Spring. Okay? Oops. 2 generations later, the second Isaac Hicks started Hicks Nurseries in 1853 in Westbury. It's still going strong, a family business, 7 generations, 173 years later. Another business the family started was Westbury Coal Yard. Then it changed its name when it also got into selling oil. They were successful because they were noted for their quality, their integrity, and treating employees fairly, and they were able to change to meet the needs of the day. Moving up another couple of generations stands out about my grandfather, Henry Hicks. He was a nurseryman. Now, in the 1920s, the nursery employed a large number of Italian immigrants, and they specialized in landscaping and transplanting very large trees, such that it might take 14 or 16 horses to pull the wagon, which was pulling the tree. Okay. They did that a lot for the wealthy Vanderbilts, Whitneys, Clarks on the northern coast of Long Island, which is where the rich people tended to live. We lived in the middle of the island, okay? But during the difficult years of the Depression, my grandfather did not lay off any of his workers. Instead, he had the family members and the higher salaried staff accept a severe cut in pay so that he could afford to retain his poor immigrant laborers, whom he gave the wages of $15 a week and credit at the coal yard to keep their families warm. He kept these workers working throughout the Depression. My grandfather lived a simple lifestyle so that others could also live, and he adapted to meet the needs of others. A funny little aside is 70 years later, the Della Santa Society of the Catholic Church in Westbury honored my grandfather the support he'd provided these Italian immigrants during the Depression. And some of those Italian immigrant sons and daughters and grandchildren still worked at the nursery. Okay. And the Catholic Church gave my brother a clock blessed by the Pope in my grandfather's memory. Now for a little bit about Westbury Meeting. I said Westbury Meeting started in the 1662, and the record of the first meeting house was 1700. The current meeting house was built in 1902, okay, with a separate meeting house built in 1830 to the Orthodox. What? Okay. The Hicksite and the Orthodox officially recombined in 1955, although the Orthodox meeting house in Westbury wasn't used for Orthodox worship during my lifetime. However, it became the Sunday school building. It was put to good use. In the late 1940s, they installed electricity in the Orthodox building. They kept the wood burning stove, and there wasn't any plumbing in this building or indoor, nice flush the toilet type plumbing. My mother and aunts and some other Quaker ladies decided to start the Sunday school program, and they developed a thriving program with a separate class for most grades, with Bible stories, Quaker history, service projects, etc. At Christmas time, we decorated the Christmas tree with mittens, which were sent to AFSC for kids in Europe. The Christmas pageant came a few years after that. I'll talk about that later. After Sunday school was over, we'd run over to the Hicksite meeting house to greet our parents, grandparents, cousins, and friends and relatives, okay? In the summer, we'd go to meeting with our parents. My cousin, lucky cousin, had a go-to-meeting doll. I did not. Okay. I like to sit next to my grandmother and hold her hands in meeting. She had nice, bony, arthritic Quaker old lady hands. Okay? After meeting, I remember thinking that my parents talked too long, and my brothers, sisters, and I were always eager to get home. Business meetings seemed too long, and as a teenager, I learned to drive after meeting for worship when my father would give us the keys to the car and we'd drive through the cemetery and check out our relatives. The Hickses lived inside the gate on the left side, the Posts on the right side, the Jacksons on a little bit further down here. We'd go check them all out. Okay? Another cemetery memory of mine is getting in trouble for turning cartwheels on gravestones. My mother told me that was okay, that my ancestors probably liked it. Didn't bother her much. Quarterly meeting was the big deal, at least in my eyes. We held quarterly meeting at Westbury every summer. The meeting house had a long building. It was probably similar, although not look how it looked, but in purpose and such, to the meeting house Lyceum in Sandy Spring. It was a big deal, or at least the kids thought it was. It was a social event. I am sure there were other things going on, meeting for worship, business meetings, speaker, etc., but I wasn't involved in those. My grandmother made our picnic lunch. Each year she made tongue sandwiches, especially for quarterly meeting, and we ate them. From a child's point of view, however, a highlight of quarterly meeting was the Dixie ice cream, which came in cups with movie stars' pictures on the lids, and we considered them to be collector's items. My cousin put dry ice in the iced tea. That caused a big stir among my great aunts, and there are other stories like that. That's what I remember about quarterly meeting. Going back a little bit, or to my family and World War II. My family, Hicks family, had always had a Christmas party at my great aunt's house, and we have pictures of the family all sitting together through 1943. I had two uncles. My father's uncle, who had been a conscientious objector at the beginning of the war, but joined the army when Germans came ashore on Long Island, and my mother's brother, who was not raised and was not a Quaker. They were both in the army over in Europe. My mother's brother died December 24th, 1944, as a prisoner of war. He was murdered. My Uncle Bill died January 7th, 1945, in the Battle of the Bulge. My father, who'd had polio as a young adult, was not able to serve in World War II, but he was in the civil defense and he did a whole bunch of other things, but he was not in the military. These deaths had a profound effect on both sides of the family. My father was now responsible for running two family businesses, helping with family matters and old relatives, which we had a number of. It was a tremendous load for him, and he carried it with grace for the rest of his life. Also, he was treasurer of the meeting for many years. In 2023, we visited the graves of American military in the American military cemeteries in the Netherlands and Luxembourg. It really hit home to me how my uncle's death had impacted my parents' lives and how they kept on going and going and going. As a little girl, as part of my bedtime prayers, my mother would record one special thing that happened to each of us. I was three. There were four. My youngest sister was born a couple of years later in our Happy Day books. I think that was one of her ways to keep things together and to boost her own spirits. Don't get so overwhelmed with sadness that you can't see the good in the life in life. Love those who are no longer with you, but look for the joy in life today. We had a quiet Christmas for a couple of years. And then my mother, my aunt, and some other ladies started the Christmas pageant. I think that was their way of getting back and showing the joy, the hope, the beauty of Christmas. A couple of years after that, when we got a little bit older, there was a meeting for worship on Christmas Eve. We didn't go to that. Our family, with the nursery business, you finished work on Christmas Eve, and then we just never got there. But well, anyway, my mother started inviting friends to our house for cookies after meeting for worship. Next year there were more. Next year there were more. The next year she ended up expanding this in a couple of years to having a turkey dinner for everybody at our house on Christmas Eve. My mother's philosophy was invite as many as come, don't leave anybody out. She had a stone soup philosophy. All you need is another package of frozen green beans and sprinkle some almonds on top, and it'll seem fancy. Our home was always open for friends and strangers with hospitality and friendship all year round, always welcoming, always room for one more, always helping out people of all faiths and backgrounds. My mother invited the Jehovah's Witnesses who came to our door in for tea, and she talked to them about their religion and share her Quaker faith. They became good friends for years. My mother showed that she valued her friends' commitment to their beliefs, even though they weren't hers. Here's some other meeting outreach after World War II. Westbury Meeting sponsored 3 DP or displaced persons families after World War II. Our family was very involved because we were able to provide housing and employment at the nursery. And those were two conditions when you would sponsor a family. You needed to provide housing and you needed to provide employment. Getting ready for them, my father felt that we should be able to greet them in their native tongue. Now, my father grew up on Long Island. He went to George School, he went to Cornell, and he probably went on 3, let's say, camping trips to Canada. Other than that, he had not been out of the country. But he got a German self-taught book. And my father, night after night, tried to teach his children how to speak German at the dinner table. Was wollen Sie machen for Mittagmorgen? What do you want to do tomorrow morning? We'd go visit these families to see how they were doing on the weekends and see what we could do to help. That continued for years. There are other stories with that, and I won't get into those today. Then in 1955, there was the Hiroshima Maidens Project, and the Quakers provided hospitality to 25 Japanese women who were disfigured by the atomic bomb. And they'd come to the U.S. as part of Norman Cousins of the Saturday Review for for reconstructive surgery at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York. They performed 138 surgeries in 2 years. The Quakers on Long Island, New Jersey, and New York provided the hospitality between the surgeries when they were recuperating. Actually, Mochico's De Silva's mother was the official translator for the group. She lived in New Jersey, so I didn't know her, but we have had conversations since then about the Hiroshima Maidens Project. Two maidens stayed with our family part of the time, causing me to share a bedroom with my younger sister. That happened seemed to happen often when my parents would invite other people to stay at our house. My father tried to teach us some Japanese, but I think he had a little bit more success trying to teach us a little bit of German. But all I remember is giggling together more than what we said to each other. I remember a piano teacher in our meeting providing piano lessons to strengthen their hands and fingers following surgery, which they'd had to remove the keloid scarring between their fingers. Then there's the famous red trousers incident. There was a recent immigrant from Poland who came to meeting riding a bicycle and wearing red trousers. I am not sure what caused the stir, but some of the old Quaker ladies thought this was most inappropriate. To wear trousers, a woman to wear trousers to meeting and ride a bicycle? So my mother and Rosalind Zuz's Aunt Catherine Parson and a couple of other women joined this woman and started wearing pants to meeting. End of issue. These are some of the examples how my parents did things, not making a big stir, but making a big point. How to welcome, how to live simply, how to help others in need, and how to think of others. In the summer, we'd go to Silver Bay, and I would hear stories by Anna Curtis. She wrote a book about stories of the Underground Railroad and what some of the Quakers did. Recently, Barb Platt and Barb had also been to yearly meeting, chatted and compared what we remember about Anna Curtis. She was a little old lady and she was wonderful. Not stopping when my brothers, sisters, and I, and everybody went off to George School and then college. My parents kept on going, and my mother started Westbury Friends School. That was in 1957. So that is my background, but why am I a Quaker today? I learned about Quakerism not by being preached to, but by my parents and relatives' actions. Let your lives speak. Some of these things I've mentioned are the examples I heard, but I needed to figure it out for myself. And how did I want to live in the light? My sisters married and made other choices. What was best for them? My brother married a woman whose father was a Presbyterian minister, and they went off to a Protestant church. My brother still kept up with meeting, but he did some of both. That's okay. Everybody needs to think things out for themselves. I did some browsing around in my teens and youth to check, but other faiths simply didn't connect with me the way Quakerism did. I went to George School. I was the 16th in my family to go there, 17 if you count Graham, who was also there. In religion class, we had discussions about the inner light, that of God in everyone. That really made sense to me, although I remember having the discussion that among friends that some people turned their light up higher than others. After George School, I went on a work camp to Germany with George School and met students from affiliated schools in Germany and France. We spent the summer working in a Lutheran children's refugee home. Then Graham came along, although I'd known him for a long time by that time, and we were living in Atlanta. We were engaged and going to get married. Graham was unfamiliar with Quaker weddings, and actually, kind of so was I, because there hadn't been many Quaker weddings recently in Westbury meeting. We went to Atlanta meeting and met Lauren and Beth Garrettson, and they invited us to their home in Atlanta and told us all about Quaker weddings. I remember that really helped Graham, and it gave me some insights too. Graham had been raised in an interdenominational Protestant church in Venezuela. We were married in Westbury under the care of Westbury meeting in my backyard with a reception at the meeting house. Then Graham was in the Army because he'd been in ROTC in college, and we moved to Maryland. We wanted to find a church or a meeting or something that we could share as a family. We came to meeting a few times and visited some other churches seeking a spiritual home. We'd been going a couple of weeks with some friends to a Presbyterian church. We liked the minister. We liked his sermons. We liked many of the things that he was doing. It was really appealing to young adults. But then he went away, well, on vacation, who knows where, and the elders led the service. After the service, they came up to me, told me I was glad that I was there, that we were there. And then they said that it was okay. They were the shepherds and I was a sheep. Well, that was like a flash of lightning went off in my head. That didn't sit well with me. I realized how Quakers worship, how all are equal in the eyes of the Lord. We all have the inner light. And I thought, I'm no sheep. End of that church. Okay. I needed to think for myself and share my thoughts in a community with others seeking truth and values and hard work to make it a better, more just world. And we started attending Sandy Spring meeting in 1971. We had, as our kid, we had three kids, Kathy, Jenny, Danny. We emphasized, Graham and I emphasized the importance of each of the children figuring out what was best for them. We felt we knew what was best for us, but our children are of us. They are not us. And so Kathy today wanted something other than Quakerism, and that is okay. I support her in that. She goes to a Presbyterian church in Michigan and loves it. Danny and Jenny come to meeting. Some of the things we did along the way with our kids was one, we got very involved in CISV, which is Children's International Summer Village. It was formed after World War II to foster intercultural understanding and friendship as an essential step towards world peace. The founder believed that by creating opportunities for children of different cultures to come together and learn to make friends, they'd grow up and become ambassadors for a more just and peaceful world. Our family got involved. There was a camp for 10-year-olds, which several summers was held at Sandy Spring. That had children from 15 different countries coming to the camp. At 10, play was the most important, and all the different languages did not present a problem. There was interchange for young teens, and I was a leader in that. And all three of the kids participated in that. I took a group once year to the Netherlands, and we stayed with a family in the Netherlands. And the next year, the kids from the Netherlands came and stayed with us. So we did Finland, we did Netherlands, we did Sweden, and then for 17-year-olds, they have what was called a seminar program. And it was held in Italy, and Jenny was part of that. I've been on a number of committees and activities and meeting. I gotten involved in the pageant in part because of my childhood memories and how the impact that it had on my mom. I don't agree with people who say they don't celebrate Christmas because it's too commercial. I feel that's all the more important, that a Christmas pageant is important to show what I think and what we think, what others think is the real meaning of Christmas is the time to wonder at the birth of a baby was his message of joy, hope, and love. I love that the pageant is a meeting-wide activity Participation of all ages, not a show put on by kids, as some have claimed. I love the music. I love the excitement of the kids all dressed up in their costumes. I love the Bible verses with queries to help us reflect what they mean today. I love sharing the poem, The Work of Christmas. I love decorating our tree with ornaments where we each put what we could individually do to help bring peace in the coming year. What does something that happened over 2,000 years ago mean for us in today's world? Since retiring from Montgomery College after 32 years, I've been very involved helping out a lot with my grandkids, especially the local ones. I love seeing them grow and develop in their own special way. They've taught me just as my ancestors taught me. One of the joys, I say, of growing old is hearing my children tell stories and give guidance to their children, the ones I tried to convey to them when they were little, but I wondered if anybody was paying attention. Then I see things reflected in my grandchildren. My skips a beat. Sometimes we just need to be patient and have faith. My label, though, isn't what's important. I believe that there's inner light in each of us. I believe the Bible has important messages for us to ponder. It's up to us to figure out what these messages mean and how to apply their meaning in today's world. I'm sharing my journey, but I missed all the craziness, uncertainty, and pain coming from Washington today makes it hard to get a grip on everything. I believe in the goodness in life, and sometimes I just wish it would hurry up. I don't think my journey is finished. I've really enjoyed thinking about my spiritual journey, which I didn't realize was my spiritual journey, but it sure is. And I hope others in the meeting will take time to do the same. It's been a wonderful experience for me, and thank you for letting me share it with you.
Thanks for watching our video. For more content from Sandy Spring Friends Meeting, click to subscribe.